Thank you. Madam Chair and members of the board, may I respectfully suggest that CLF's main points in their arguments, in essence, I think mistake the role of the advisory opinion process in helping this board to understand some of the concerns and some of the particular issues that the different agencies want you to focus in on. I think, there were a lot of opinions that you asked for. You received back opinions from each and every one of the agencies. As far as you look at each of the actual opinions, for sure, there's no question that some of the agencies that were before the town zoning board, for example, the town planning board, had very, very strong views opposing the project and that they do not support the project. There was also, I think we could tell, a lot of frustration in the EFSB process that they asks for opinions at a preliminary stage of the process before there are final, what they're used to seeing, which are final permits, final construction drawings and such like that. So the complaint, I think, that was mentioned about the zoning board, for example, fails to point out that the zoning board did in fact offer a number of opinions on the questions that were asked. They expressed concern about the lack of a water supply plan. A number of the agencies that CLF brings up in their point talk about the lack of a water supply plan. So that was an obvious deficiency that none of the agencies could really focus in on. So that's been taken care of. We addressed that earlier today. I hope we can go back and repeat that. With regard to the zoning board, the information that the zoning board, again, was frustrated about was that there was no final site plans and drawings for them to review. That was the essence of their frustration. But I think, again, what's not pointed out by CLF's arguments is that in the process of the EFSB and in the rules, construction designs, construction materials and drawings are developed as the review is undertaken to take into account comments, take into account issues and concerns, take into account the guidance of the board for presentation to the officials, particularly the agencies that deal with construction designs and construction permits at a later part of the review process. Your rules have an entire section devoted towards construction drawings being submitted to the agencies at the later part of the process, even post-licensing. And I understand that creates some difficulties many times and some frustration. CLF's attorneys pointed out the OSP decision, for example, and the Narragansett Electric Transmission Company. It's important to remember that in those opinions, the board concluded that it would be impossible at the time of the review for the building inspectors and some of the building officials at the local level to really comment on and give advisory opinions on compliance with local codes and specific design requirements, because those drawings would be necessarily developed after further input is given by the board and some of the other process. This is not an unusual situation. So the board has determined that common sense, and I'm quoting from the OSP decision, common sense dictates that such permits should not be issued until a thorough review of the design and final construction drawings, and that it would be unreasonable to require an applicant for a major energy facility to have completed and final design and construction drawings prior to a decision regarding the license. If a license is granted with the conditions associated with it, the contractors that are hired then develop their plans present them. That's a typical arrangement for a project, especially a new project. CLS attorney mentioned the planning board, the town's planning board. Again, a lot of opposition. We had weeks worth of hearings before the planning board. Expert testimony was presented by the town's experts, our experts, written oral testimony, over 300 data questions submitted by the town, which we answered. There was a lot of information that was presented to the planning board. The planning board issued a 25-page decision with a number of opinions, and a whole chunk of that opinion was related to a series of conditions, very specific conditions that we wanted this board to consider. I think that's worth emphasizing. So the argument that Invenergy did not provide information or did not participate, I think is not true, and I believe that it's a mischaracterization of the advisory opinion process, which is, again, as I say, a role for the advisory opinions to advise you on concerns and issues that need to be explored through the final hearing process. You're going to be referring, as we recommended, the water supply information back to some of these agencies for their review, which is what they've requested. If there's an opportunity and any of these agencies wish to comment further on some of the materials that have come before them, or there's been, we haven't been doing nothing since we met back in October or September. As I pointed out in our materials, there's a lot of documentation. We continue to get data questions. We continue to respond to them. Those are all available for further review, further input, further testimony, and for evidentiary hearings at the appropriate time. As to the statutory timelines, we agree that those timelines are directory and not mandatory, and that those timelines are there in there for the board's purpose of managing this process as the board sees fit in the most expeditious and the most efficient manner possible. That, in essence, is our response to the CLF arguments. Thank you.
Could you please elaborate on your answer if the CLF's argument that yes, a lot of information has been submitted,
yes,
but the necessary information has not been submitted?
Yes, right. I think your point, Commissioner, is that big. For example, with regard to preliminary plans and conceptual drawings, there are tens or maybe 100 specific, very detailed construction plans and drawings that were submitted to the board. There was supplemental information. There was even more drawings, site drawings that were prepared by HDR, the consultant. These were all stamped as preliminary. These were all conceptual because they're in kind of an early stage of development. The town zoning board was very explicit in their comment that they were very frustrated without seeing the need. They believed they needed to see final construction design drawings.
Exactly.
So that was my point as far as, so we provided a substantial amount of information with regard to construction designs, which is construction drawings. But they were recognizing that these were conceptual and preliminary. It caused some frustration with the town zoning.